Before I say a single word, I need you to draw something. Now, seriously, get a pen, get a piece of paper, because if you understand this drawing, you'll understand why one man you've probably never voted for can affect your mortgage, your rent, your pension, your savings, your business, your job. Be arguably more powerful than Donald Trump himself, Wall Street, and arguably the future of the entire Western world. Are you ready? Now, draw a stick man and label him you. Fairly simple. Not America, not Wall Street, you. Because every economic decision eventually lands back in your kitchen. Now, draw a bank and put it beside you, something like this. Now, draw above that, maybe a larger box here, and draw it, call it the Federal Reserve. Now, most people hear Federal Reserve and imagine a giant underground vault of gold bars and men in suits smoking cigars while plotting world domination and bowing down to a goat head. Some of you are already typing in the comments. That's exactly what it is, Tomi. Just relax. We'll get there. Now, draw an arrow from you to the bank. Then, draw an arrow from the Federal Reserve to the bank. Congratulations. You've just drawn one of the most powerful relationships in the modern world because most people think money comes from the bank, but the bank takes its cues from the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve controls something almost nobody talks about, and that's the price of money. Now, pause. Let me say that again. The Federal Reserve controls the price of money. Most people think money is just money. And no, money has a price. Just like houses have prices, cars have prices, eggs have a price, money also has a price. And that price is called an interest rate. Now, let me make this ridiculously simple. Imagine my son Harvey comes to me and says, Daddy, can I borrow $100? I say, sure. The next month, I want $105 back, I tell Harvey. The extra $5 is the cost of borrowing money. It's how much that money costs. That's called interest. Now multiply that conversation by hundreds of millions of people, families, businesses, banks, governments, entire nations, and suddenly one decision about interest rates can change the direction of the whole economy. Now, draw, if you will, a thermometer. And right at the bottom of that thermometer, put cold. And at the top, I want you to put hot. And in the middle, I want you to write economy. Because the Federal Reserve thinks of the economy the way your body thinks about temperature. Too hot, there's a problem. Too cold, there's a problem. Just right, and you're healthy. Now, here's where economists become completely useless. They'll say things like the economy is overheating, and normal people are left wondering, what does that mean? So let me explain. Imagine 20 children at a birthday party, 20 pizzas, everybody eats, everybody's happy. Now imagine I walk into the room and give every child $1,000. There's still only 20 pizzas. What happens? Children start bidding. $20, $50, $100. The pizza didn't change. The money changed. That's called inflation. Inflation is what happens when there's too much money and not enough pizzas. That's what economists mean when they say the economy is getting too hot. Now reverse it. Nobody has money. Nobody buys pizzas. Nobody opens businesses. Nobody hires workers. Everybody's sitting at home watching conspiracy videos while eating cereal in the dark. That's called a cold economy. No spending, no confidence, no movement. So the Federal Reserve's job is basically to stand beside the economy, holding a thermostat, trying to stop everybody from catching either a fever or hypothermia. And today, we're going to talk about the man holding that thermostat because he just gave one of the most important speeches of this year and arguably your life, because the love of money is the root of all evil. So the one who controls the liver is the one the church should be looking at right now. And most people have absolutely no idea what he said. Let's go. Welcome back to Prophetic, Interpreting the Age, to my 400,000 Issachars and, of course, Issachants, my Christians and Crustians, my saints and ain'ts, my I watch CNBC every morning saints, and my I thought Jerome Powell was a worship leader saints. Welcome back, because today I watched a Federal Reserve speech so you don't have to. By the time we're done, you're going to understand what the Federal Reserve actually is, who Kevin Walsh is, why Donald Trump likes him more than Powell, why Wall Street hangs on every syllable he speaks, why one sentence can move trillions of dollars, and what inflation actually means, what a recession actually means, what hawks are and doves are, what a dot plot is, and why America runs on debt, why the bond market matters, what could create Trump's so-called golden age, what could create the opposite, a recession, and most importantly, what Issachar should do next. Well, let's go deeper, because if you've stayed with me this far, you've earned the right to enter the room behind the room, not the speech.
I am pleased to report that members of the FOMC are unambiguous and unanimous. This committee will deliver price stability.
The meaning behind the speech. And again, not the words, the incentives behind the words. Not merely what Kevin Walsh said, but why he may have said it, and why everybody from Wall Street to Washington was listening. What is a dot plot? Let's start with one of the dumbest names in economics, the dot plot. Every year, economists invent a phrase that sounds like it belongs in a kindergarten classroom. This year, it's dot plot. And somehow I feel it's conveniently devised to keep us, the lesser informed, out of market economic language, so that we're left in ignorance whilst the elite plan for us. I plan to demystify that. What is a dot plot? Simple. Imagine I ask 20 people, where do you think gas prices will be next year? Everybody writes down a number. Then I put a dot on a chart. Dot plot. Now replace gas prices with interest rates. Replace your neighbors with Federal Reserve officials. Now you have a Fed dot plot. The dot plot isn't what the Fed will do.
I think my colleagues around the table, when they submitted their dots, understand the world is changing quite quickly.
This is important. It's what Fed's officials think they might do. In other words, it's 20 economists publicly guessing. And Wall Street treats those guesses like prophecy. Think about that. One of the largest financial systems ever built is partially reacting to a collection of educated guesses. That's why markets move, because markets don't trade reality. Markets trade expectations. And that's a sentence worth writing down. Markets do not trade reality. Markets trade expectations. I suppose I tell you tomorrow there will be rain. Everybody buys umbrellas. Umbrella stocks go up. Raincoat stocks go up. Boot stocks go up. Then tomorrow arrives and there's no rain. The market doesn't move because of rain. The market moves because of expectation. Did you get that? Most people discover this secret far too late. And if you're going to enter the occupy till I come game of the book of Luke chapter 19, verse 13, or rather, do business till I come, or invest this money till I come, as some translations infer, then you're going to have to understand this key difference. What causes a market to boom? Let me say this embarrassingly simple. Imagine a town, 100 people, everybody earns $100. Then suddenly somebody arrives and says, I'm lending everybody another $100. Now everybody feels richer. People buy things, businesses hire, houses sell, cars sell, investments rise. Everybody celebrates.
This is called a boom. A boom is usually some combination of easy money, confidence, credit, or optimism. Or to put it another way, people believe tomorrow will be better than today. Booms are simply often stories like the railroad boom, the internet boom, the housing boom, and now, yes, you've guessed it, the AI boom. Every boom begins with a true story, then eventually becomes an exaggerated story. And then that story eventually becomes a dangerous story. The internet changed the world. That's true. Every internet company was worth billions. That's false. AI will change the world. Probably true. Every AI company is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Maybe not. And that's how bubbles form. Stories. What causes a crash? Now, let's reverse it. A crash is usually when reality catches up with Grandpa's World War II exaggerated story. Imagine, if you will, a man earning $50,000 annually. He buys a Ferrari, a mansion, a yacht, a private jet. For a few months, he looks rich. Then reality arrives. The bills show up. A market crash is often reality arriving. That's why crashes feel sudden, but they're usually years in the making. The collapse is sudden, but the cause is not. Now, who does the Fed work for? Now, let's ask the question that every conspiracy channel asks. Who does the Federal Reserve actually work for? Well, there are two answers. The official answer, the Federal Reserve, was created by Congress in 1913. It reports to Congress. Its chairman testifies before Congress. Congress can alter its structure. Can you see my lips moving? That's the official answer. Now let's talk about why people distrust that answer, because the Federal Reserve occupies a strange position. It's not fully government, it's not fully private, it's neither federal nor is it reserve. It's somewhere weirdly in between. And that's where suspicion creeps in, because when you control the price of money, you influence everything. You influence the farmer, the banker, the homeowner, the church attendee, the investor, the business owner, the government. Money is the bloodstream of society, and whoever influences the bloodstream influences the body. Now, does that mean the Fed is secretly controlling everything and working for the Illuminati? I don't know. But it does mean that decisions ripple into almost every area of life. That's why central banking creates so much suspicion, not because they're omnipotent, but because they're extremely influential. And influence always attracts scrutiny. Now let's do something important. Let's hold two thoughts at once. The polished mission, the Fed would say, we stabilize prices, we promote employment, we protect the economy, we prevent panics. All reasonable goals. Now let's examine the darker interpretation. Not necessarily true, but worth understanding because millions believe it. The darker interpretation says, whenever debt becomes unmanageable, the system solves the problem by creating more money. It's called quantitative easing, or simply printing money. Creating more money quietly transfers wealth, not by taking your money, no, by reducing what your money can buy. And that's an important distinction. Nobody steals your $100. Your $100 stays in your bank account, smiling at you. It simply buys less. That's a wealth transfer. And sadly, it's typically flowing from the poor to the rich. It's taxation without a tax collector. Again, not necessarily the Fed's intention. That's how critics see it. The critics say, we don't solve debt, we simply dilute it. Imagine 10 people owe 100 apples. Instead of finding more apples, we redefine what an apple is worth. That's how critics think about inflation. Now, why does Walsh matter? Let's return to Kevin Walsh and his somewhat ginormously intellectual speech that left many of us blindsided. Because every generation gets its economic stewards: Paul Volcker, Alan Greenspan, Ben Bernanke, Janet Yellen, Jerome Powell, now Kevin Walsh. Each of these high priests of a dark, sinister economy have arrived during different seasons. Walker fought inflation, for instance. Greenspan oversaw expansion. Bernanke faced collapse. Powell faced the pandemic chaos. Walsh now faces something entirely different: a debt mountain, an AI revolution that's not pending, it's already here, a demographic shift, a geopolitical transition, a possible commodity supercycle, and that's why this matters. Again, if you want me to talk about supercycles and what I'm doing, please type supercycle in the chat below. Not because Walsh is magical, because every pilot inherits different weather. Powell inherited a storm. Walsh may inherit an intersection, a critical crossroads, a singularity where we don't quite know what AI could mean for the rest of us. Trump's golden age, or is it a recession? Let's talk practically. How does a golden age happen? Well, step one, energy stays affordable. Step two, interest rates gradually fall. Step three, investments accelerate. Step four, business is higher. And step five, productivity increases. Step six, people feel wealthier. That's the optimistic path. Now the recession path. Energy rises, inflation rises, rates stay high, borrowing slows, businesses cut spending, layoffs begin, confidence falls, and suddenly people stop buying things. That's called a recession. A recession is simply a society becoming cautious all at the same time. Think of it like musical chairs. Everybody wants to sit down at the same time. Now, here's what I heard underneath the speech. The speech wasn't really about rates.
To be clear, the Fed will deliver price stability. My own judgment is the committee spent quite a bit of time, not just in 2 days, but over iterations of a couple of weeks. That's what we're prepared to say about inflation, but the commitment to deliver is strong, unanimous, and unambiguous.
The speech was about credibility. Every central banker fears one thing above all: that's losing credibility. Because money works because people believe it works. The dollar is ultimately a belief system. The stock market is a belief system. The bond market is a belief system. The economy itself is largely a confidence system. So whether you like it or not, every economist has faith, and none of them have the opportunity to be atheists, at least not in the God of money sense. Confidence is difficult to build, and it's very easy to lose. The hidden message I heard was, we need people to keep believing. Believing inflation can be controlled. Believing debt can be managed. Believing growth can continue. Believing stability remains possible. And perhaps more prophetic, believing the Strait of Hormuz is actually open. And perhaps that's the real challenge of this generation, not merely managing money, but managing trust. Because when trust breaks, systems break. And when systems break, people start looking for alternatives. Now, here's the interesting part. We talked about the siege, the ravens, and what Issachar should do. I want to take you somewhere the economists can't take you. Because economists can describe numbers, analysts can describe markets, politicians can describe policies, but only prophets can describe the spirit of the age. And I believe what we are watching right now is not merely an economic transition. I believe we're watching a siege. Now write this down. A siege is different from a battle. A battle is loud. A siege is patient. A battle attacks your walls. A siege attacks your access. When you're in a battle, you try to destroy the other person immediately. A siege simply waits for you to destroy yourself. America as an empire is 250 years old. 250 is the average lifespan of an empire before it begins to experience decay. And that's what made siege warfare so terrifying in Scripture. It's what led to the fall of Constantinople. The enemy didn't always storm the city. The enemy simply surrounded it. They stopped food, water, trade, movement, and then they waited. Time became the weapon. The enemy didn't need to kill you. The enemy only needed to stop you from breathing and living. And that is exactly what we see in 2 Kings 6. Samaria was under siege. The city wasn't destroyed. The city was trapped. Food became absurdly expensive. A donkey's head sold for silver. Imagine paying luxury car prices for something nobody wants to eat. Dove's dung was being sold. Whether it was literal dung or a substitute food, it doesn't matter. The point is this: when access disappears, desperation reprices reality. That's inflation. Inflation is not merely prices rising. Inflation is scarcity screaming. It's access being restricted. It's fear entering the marketplace. And the king looked around and said, "We're finished." The people looked around and said, "We're finished." The economists of Samaria said, "We're toast." The analysts of Samaria said, "We're done." The commentators said, "We're finished." But then the prophet stood up. By this time tomorrow. That's why I love prophets, because prophets are the only people who walk into impossible situations and start talking about tomorrow. They're the only people who don't stay in their clerical lane and stick to theology. No, they rise up to talk about the economy and stocks. Everybody else is talking about what is. The prophets start talking about what can be. Everybody else is describing the siege. The prophet is describing the breakthrough. And notice something. God did not break the siege through the obvious solution. He didn't send a large army. He didn't send better weapons or impressive kings. He used lepers, the people nobody expected, the people nobody trusted, the people nobody wanted. God used the unlikely thing, the raven. And that brings me to what I believe the Spirit of God is saying. The world keeps asking, will it be a hawk or will it be a dove? Will Wash be hawkish? Will he be dovish? Will markets tighten or loosen? Will Trump choose pressure? Will Trump choose compromise? Will Iran escalate, retreat? The world keeps asking hawk or dove, but heaven may be answering raven. You see, a hawk represents force, a dove represents peace, but a raven represents provision, provision from an unexpected place, provision that offends your preferences, violates your assumptions, provision that doesn't arrive wrapped in a package you expected. Elijah wanted God. God sent birds. Elijah wanted a miracle. God sent a feeding schedule. Elijah wanted heaven. God sent ravens. And that's often how God works. God rarely offends your faith, but he frequently offends your preferences. Some of you are praying for doves and God is sending ravens. Some of you are praying for angels and God is sending opportunities. Some of you are waiting for promotion and God is sending training. Maybe you're waiting for multiplication and God's sending discipline. Maybe you're waiting for harvest and God's sending seed. The ravens doesn't look spiritual. The raven doesn't even look impressive or clean. But the raven feeds the prophets. And that's why I believe this next season is dangerous for people who are addicted to appearances and optics, because provision may not come through what looks impressive. It may make people wonder why you're leaving your job to start that AI company. What might ravens look like in this season? Infrastructure, AI, data centers, applications, servers, software, power. The earth needs cooling systems, chips. Children chase the toy, adults buy the factory. Children chase the apps, adults buy the infrastructure. And that's why I've been saying repeatedly, don't only look at what is fashionable, look at what is necessary, the boring stuff. That's what's going to make you wealthy, because fashion changes, necessity remains. Ravens may be energy, land, water. They may be data infrastructure, cybersecurity, or ravens may be overlooked opportunities, relationships, nations. Watching Washington or Taiwan, Wall Street, or watching what's happening in Nigeria right now. Everybody's watching headlines, but prophets watch gates. Speaking of gates, pray over the gates. Hormuz, Taiwan, Malacca, Suez, Panama, the digital gates. Pray over and for this AI revolution that we have crossed into, because there are sinister actors at the gates who want to have their way. And whoever controls flow influences destiny. Now, what should Issachar do? Again, I may be repeating myself here, but number one, stay liquid. Not fearful, liquid. That means Cash gives options. Have enough assets, have enough securities, collect your gold bars, but know that your gold bars are not assets. They're simply securities. Staying liquid frees up your options. Number two, reduce foolish debt. Not all debt, foolish debt, vanity debt, impress people debt, Instagram debt, look rich debt, the kind of debt that steals tomorrow to entertain today. Kill it. Number three, invest in understanding. The greatest investment in the next decade may not be money. It may be interpretation. Everybody has information now. Very few people have understanding. Information tells you what happened. Understanding tells you what it means. Information tells you there's a speech. Understanding tells you why it matters. Information tells you rates moved. Understanding tells you what to do next. Issachar specialized in understanding. And that's why I'm launching my new YouTube subscription channel. You can check it out right after this program if you'd like to go deeper in your understanding of these things. Number four, upskill relentlessly. If AI can do your job, become the person who manages AI. If AI can replace your task, become the person who oversees the replacement of that task. Don't compete with the machine, because the machine never sleeps. The machine works 24/7. Position yourself above the machine. Have dominion over the machine. Number five, build community. The early church survived because it was connected. Isolation is expensive. Community is resilient. The future belongs to connected people, not isolated geniuses. Connected people. And finally, trust God. Not because everything is fine, but because God has navigated more transitions than you can ever imagine. He fed Israel in the wilderness. He fed Elijah through ravens. He fed widows through jars. He fed multitudes through lunches from little boys. He fed prophets through impossible circumstances. The question is not whether God can provide. The question is whether we will recognize provision when it actually arrives. That's the word I want to leave with you. The world is asking hawk or dove. Heaven is answering raven. Hawks tighten, doves loosen, ravens feed. Hawks represent discipline, doves represent relief. Ravens represent supernatural provision, unlikely instruments. And I believe we're entering a season where God is feeding his people through unusual channels. So don't panic, prepare. Don't fear, interpret. Don't obsess over headlines. Discern the times. Because this is not the hour for hysteria. This is the hour for Issachar. And Issachar understood the times and knew what nations ought to do. That's the purpose of this channel. Not what to feel, not what to post or complain about, what to do. So become wise, become disciplined, become discerning, become positioned. And when the ravens come, and they will, don't reject them because they don't look like doves. Because if you reject the ravens, you reject the seasons. This is where I need to say something that may offend both economists and Christians alike. America is not the most powerful force in the world. China is not the most powerful force in the world. Wall Street is not the most powerful force in the world. Silicon Valley is not. The Federal Reserve is not the most powerful force in the world. The superpower that we all should be looking to, the one that has lasted every empire that has ever existed, the gates of hell could not prevail against, is the church. Not the building, not the denomination or the organization. You, the people, the ecclesia, the called out ones. Think about it. Rome had legions. Where is Rome? Babylon had wealth. Where's Babylon? Egypt had mountains. Where's Egypt? Persia had armies. But where's Persia? The Soviet Union had nuclear power. But where today is the Soviet Union? Every empire eventually discovers the same truth. Power has an expiration date, but the church outlasts them all. The church outlives every funeral, empire, government, currency, market, civilization. Why? Because the church is the only institution founded by a king who conquered death itself. And that is an unfair advantage. The church has survived every collapse in history. The church survived Rome, the Black Death, revolutions, bubonic plagues, world wars, depression, communism, dictators, persecution, COVID. And it will survive this. So hear me carefully. The future belongs to networks, ecosystems, and the church is God's original net. that works. Before Facebook, before X, before the internet, before central banking, before global supply chains, God built a global network, the church. Think about Acts. When one believer suffered, another believer supplied. When one city had famine, another city sent provision. When one region had persecution, another region opened doors. When one family lacked, another family gave. The church, you, are economically resilient because you are relationally connected. And I believe God is restoring that again. The future belongs to communities that can share knowledge, share opportunities, skills, resources, wisdom, and faith. And that's why I'm less concerned about whether the market goes up or down than whether the church finally grows up. Because mature believers can survive either environments. If markets rise, they build. If markets fall, we acquire. If opportunities expand, we steward. If opportunities shrink, we innovate. The church should never, never be the victim of history. The church should be the interpreter of it. This is Issachar. We don't panic. Issachar positions. Issachar doesn't merely observe. Issachar prepares. Issachar doesn't merely survive the future. Issachar shapes the future. And that's why I don't believe this is ultimately a message about Kevin Walsh. I don't believe this is ultimately a message about Trump. I don't even believe this is a message about Iran or bonds or inflation or the Federal Reserve. I believe this is a message about stewardship, because every generation receives a test, and our generation's test may be, can you remain wise while everybody else becomes emotional? Can you remain disciplined while everyone else becomes reckless? Can you remain hopeful while everyone else becomes fearful? Can you remain prophetic while everybody else becomes reactive? Can you see ravens while everybody else is arguing about hawks and doves? Because the world is asking who controls the money, but heaven is asking who controls themselves. The world is asking who will lower rates. Heaven is asking who will raise wisdom. The world is asking who will save the economy. Heaven is asking who will disciple nations. And perhaps the greatest mistake believers can make in this season is believing the future belongs to governments. The future belongs to prepared people. It belongs to builders, interpreters. The future belongs to Issachar. Because while empires are debating interest rates, kingdom people are building inheritance. While politicians are arguing over budgets, kingdom people are building families. And that's why Jesus never told us to panic until he comes. He told us to do business, to invest, to occupy, to influence, expand, steward, multiply until he comes. So if Kevin Walsh lowers rates, occupy. If Kevin Walsh keeps rates high, occupy. If stocks rise, the instruction doesn't change, occupy. If they fall, occupy. If economy expands, you get the point, occupy. Because our assignment was never dependent upon favorable conditions. Our assignment was always dependent upon faithful stewardship. And that's why I leave you with this. The world is asking hawk or dove. Heaven is answering raven. But beyond the raven, heaven is building Issachar. And beyond Issachar, heaven is raising a church that remembers it is still God's superpower in the earth. Not through domination, not through fear, not through politics, through wisdom, through service, through stewardship, through truth, influence, love, through the Spirit of God. If we remember who we are, then regardless of what happened yesterday, we will know exactly what to do. Thank you so much for watching Propheducation. Please let us know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Every subscription tells us that you want us to continue these programs. Every like, every share tells us that you want us to continue. And here's my commitment. We're going to continue to do the shows that you want to talk about. Please let us know in the comment section below what you want us to talk about. And like some of the people who made a comment about what they want to talk about, because it might go into the next program. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in.